Our story begins on a snowy day in 2018 in northern Italy. Outside an ancient monastery, the peaceful atmosphere is suddenly shattered by a loud bang, followed by someone shouting furiously, accusing another of being a liar, signaling that a dramatic conflict is about to unfold. It turns out that two children are loudly insulting another kid whom they had just knocked to the ground. They mock him for acting arrogant just because he has a bit of skill, then challenge him by asking what he's looking at. The light-haired boy staggers forward, falling face first into the snow after being provoked by two older bullies asking if he wants a taste. Although hurt, he remains silent, but his dirt-streaked face, marked with scratches, burns with defiance and anger. One of the bullies, curious, asks what he's doing. In response, the boy simply turns away with an indifferent expression, as if their taunts mean nothing to him. Suddenly, the boy begins quoting a verse from the Bible, saying that if someone strikes you on the right cheek, offer them the other as well, explaining that it is a teaching from Scripture. Despite the dirt on his face, his calm demeanor shows that he's relying on his faith to face the situation. His words only make things worse, fueling the bullies' anger. They shout that his attitude is what annoys them and warn him not to mess with them. From afar, at a monastery window, two others quietly witness the entire scene. The observers are an elderly priest and a young man. While the old priest seems irritated by the kids below, the young man chuckles, finding the boy interesting. Moments later, the priest solemnly orders him to train the boy to become the strongest. The young man is shocked, pointing outside to confirm whether he means that boy. The priest explains that the boy holds the potential to become humanity's greatest hope, making him extremely important to them. He emphasizes that the boy must remain pure at all costs. He has engraved the teachings of God into the child and believes that if nurtured correctly, the boy could even defeat Satan himself. The old priest continues with a strict list of commands, forbidding the young man from letting the boy become corrupted. No partying, no immoral behavior, and absolutely no teaching him to become a womanizer. But all he receives in response are careless nods and half-hearted answers. The young man confidently declares that he will handle it, leaving the priest to hold his head in despair, lamenting that he had no choice but to rely on such a troublesome youth due to lack of manpower. And so, on another snowy day, the young man and the boy leave the monastery. Both carry complicated emotions within them, one with stern, worried eyes. Amidst the heavy snowfall, the young man drags his luggage with one hand while pulling the boy by the collar with the other. 2 weeks pass. The young man is quite enjoying himself. 2 weeks later, the young man is indulging in a hedonistic party with 3 beautiful women, shouting joyfully that he's in heaven. In stark contrast, the once innocent boy is now reduced to an attendant, standing in the corner with a horrified, helpless expression, begging his master to come to his senses. The party quickly turns into an argument when one woman calls him trash, but he casually replies that if he runs out of money, he'll just ask for more. Right then, the boy appears, horrified to learn they've already spent half the church's subsidy. The woman reacts angrily, not wanting anyone's pity. The boy can no longer hold back, his eyes burning with rage, as he shouts that he's sick of watching them use church donation money to exploit those in difficult circumstances. One of the women, confidently declaring, "I'm leaving," slams the door behind her. Another deliberately flaunts her seductive body in front of the boy, bending down and teasingly asking whether he's jealous, leaving him stunned and speechless. A black-haired woman, initially cheerful, says the boy is still just a child who probably only cares about sweets. But then she becomes alarmed as she holds a large stack of money, questioning the young man about where it came from. She recalls the boy saying it was church money, and worries whether accepting such a large amount is even okay. The young man confidently explains that he will give each of them enough money to leave their current lifestyle behind. He cleverly adds that since it counts as a donation, it won't be taxed. One black-haired woman attempts to object, but another woman acts faster. Blushing, she pulls down her strap as if intending to repay him with her body, but the young man stops her, saying she doesn't need to worry about repayment or anything else. He smiled and explained that paying for the girl's company was not his preference. his attitude suddenly changed, and he angrily yelled that if this was their job, they should sell their services for a higher price and told everyone to be quiet. The girls were utterly surprised. Some thought he was just preaching, others believed he was trying to make them feel bad, and some even called him a braggart. After a moment of thoughtful silence, the young man turned back and wished the girls good night. He said he would go comfort the kid and allowed everyone to go home whenever they wished, then quietly departed. The boy stood by the window, both shocked and uneasy, unable to believe that man was his teacher. He felt there was something very wrong with him, his frustration reaching its peak. He turned back into the room, hunched over, and yelled, "Damn it!" in exasperation. In the boy's mind echoed the powerful words of the priest from years ago, that he was born into this world with a single mission, to defeat Satan. That declaration was like an enormous burden, causing the boy to only bow his head and cover his face in anguish and bewilderment. The boy clutched the crucifix tightly in his hand, his eyes gleaming with indignation and determination. He told himself that if things continued this way, he wouldn't be able to complete his mission, and his entire life would become meaningless. As the boy was deep in thought, the young man suddenly opened the door and greeted him, teasing that he had his scary face on again as usual. The boy flinched, quickly asserting that it was just his natural face, and then suspiciously asked if his master was glaring at him. Suddenly, the boy received a report that a demon had been detected in the area. At the same time, the young man appeared at the doorway, looking annoyed and denying that he had come to this remote area just to seek out women, as if there was some misunderstanding occurring. The young man explained that he had visited various brothels to search for clues about a demon. The boy then revealed that they were dealing with a low-level succubus, a type of demon that disguises itself as a prostitute to drain its victim's life force. The boy continued his analysis, feeling that something was very strange because he couldn't sense any demonic power. He proposed two hypotheses. Either this demon was too weak, or it was so powerful that it could perfectly conceal its presence. The boy reported that he had monitored the entire town for traces of demonic power, but the result was that he found nothing. The young man was utterly astonished, unable to believe that the boy had checked such a large town. Meanwhile, the boy quietly quoted a verse from the book of Exodus. "You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor," as an affirmation of the truth. The boy continued to assert firmly that God was watching and that he never lied. These authoritative words made the young man realize, finally understanding and trusting in the boy's abilities. The boy stood alone in the large room, a powerful message echoing in his mind, affirming that he was the hope of all humanity, a great role and burden placed upon his small shoulders. After gaining the boy's trust, the young man smiled confidently and invited him to come along. While the boy was still confused and didn't understand what was happening, he pointed at him and declared that he had a pretty good idea of where they would go next. Meanwhile, elsewhere in town, a little girl named Sarah happily ran to embrace her older sister on the snowy street. The sister opened her arms wide, apologizing for making her wait, creating a warm reunion scene. The two sisters walked together on the snow-covered street. Little Sarah asked her sister if she was done with work, and the sister happily confirmed that she had completed her tasks. Sarah anxiously asked her sister if she had done anything dangerous to get such a large sum of money. But her sister just smiled brightly, showed off a thick wad of cash, and declared that she had hit the jackpot, thanks to which she wouldn't have to work for a long time. However, their joy didn't last long. The older sister mumbled that perhaps they would have to leave this town, but then she hesitated, as if there was a difficult decision she couldn't yet voice. Suddenly, an armored person appeared, grabbed Sarah's arm, and declared they had to leave immediately. Sarah was extremely surprised and worried about her belongings, but the other person reassured her that they would buy new things in the next town, indicating the situation was extremely urgent. At the same time, our two main characters were discussing their departure. The young man suggested they postpone until tomorrow because it was quite cold. Suddenly, he turned to a dark-haired woman and asked a loaded question, implying she once said that paying girls to spend the night with wasn't his style. He continued, saying that spending the night with a demon wasn't his thing either, which greatly surprised the woman. while two small figures walked further away on the snowy path. Sarah and her younger sister were utterly confused after overhearing the conversation. Sarah asked her sister about the demon the stranger was talking about, but her sister simply brushed it off, calling him a creep. However, our young boy, listening from afar, found it incredibly perplexing as he couldn't sense any demonic energy. Immediately, the boy took action. He performed a ritual in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and a small object in his hand began to emit energy, indicating a divine power being summoned. A terrifying surge of power erupted, throwing the older sister backward amidst countless fragments. The boy's voice rang out, demanding justice be delivered upon this demon. However, the young man quickly reassured Sarah not to worry, as this attack was completely ineffective against humans. Attacked by surprise, the older sister revealed her true form, a demon with pointed ears and bat wings. She was utterly bewildered and astonished, shouting to ask how the boy could have known her secret. The boy explained that he had used holy water and barriers to eliminate her, but honestly it was mostly based on intuition. Meanwhile, the other girl maintained her lethal allure, true to the nature of a genuine succubus. The young man interjected, flashing a sly smile and teasing that she looked the most longing, causing the succubus to blush crimson and angrily shout, "Apologize for what?" Suddenly, another heroic figure burst through the window. This person ordered a boy named Yukuin to watch over the infant and declared it was time to punish the succubus. Yukuin, with a determined expression, immediately obeyed. The battle raged fiercely. The blond boy watched from afar, surprised by the power of the one fighting. He noticed that the opponent was only a low-level succubus, yet the other person was giving it their all, and he felt there was something very strange about the situation. The boy concentrated intensely, but still couldn't sense any demonic power, which made him even more confused and worried. Even after the demon revealed its true form, a giant bat-like creature, the boy still sensed nothing. He couldn't believe it. It was utterly illogical and abnormal. The battle ended swiftly as the heroic figure struck down the demon. Afterward, this person turned to Sarah and her sister, telling them not to dwell on what had just happened. The little girl could only cry out worriedly, "Big sister!" The attendant boy asked his master to stop, but the young man continued to attack the demon. He clarified that they fought demons for survival, which was entirely different from demons harming humans merely for pleasure. The young man realized that some stronger force was concealing this demon's power. The attendant boy agreed, astonishment clear on his face as he emphasized that something was wrong, for he still couldn't sense even a trace of demonic power, an alarming abnormality. His master speculated thoughtfully, suggesting that this demonic power was either too weak to be sensed or too potent to perfectly conceal its presence. Suddenly, a voice rang out, declaring that the older sister had lost. Amidst the chaos, the older sister still struggled to get up, asserting she could continue. She desperately pleaded for forgiveness, and at that moment, the younger sister said, "Pretending to be sisters was a lot of fun." A gigantic, deformed, and repulsive creature suddenly appeared, emitting terrifying growls. The teacher shouted, demanding he get out of there immediately. An earth-shattering boom resounded, creating a blinding explosion of light, engulfing everything in destruction. Amidst the chaos, an arm was raised, expressing extreme surprise and agony at the tremendous destructive power. Amidst the cacophonous chaos, a narration began. A poet once said, before the words could finish, the two characters were already stunned, exclaiming, "What the heck?" as they faced a completely unexpected situation. A horrifying sight unfolded. A woman, severely injured, with a fresh, gruesome wound on her abdomen. She clutched her body in despair, crying out for forgiveness, consumed by extreme pain and fear. The scene of violence and agony reached its peak as the girl screamed desperately, their bodies seemingly being violently rent asunder, with gruesome sounds echoing everywhere. A sudden and brutal attack unfolded with terrifying speed, leaving only the sounds of rending and explosion. Amidst the chaos, a horrifying truth was revealed. She is a demon. A powerful introduction rang out, speaking of one of the greatest demon lords, who wreaked havoc upon humanity throughout the Middle Ages. Accompanying it was a chilling sight, an arm ripped from a body, blood spraying, signaling this character's terrible power and brutal nature. It was a fallen angel, one of the 7 deadly sins, known as the tyrant of lust. History records that in the 17th century, she used large quantities of stimulants to transform monasteries into brothels. Her brutal nature and destructive desires were illustrated by an image of a sharp-clawed hand crushing something, creating gruesome sounds. With a cunning smile revealing sharp teeth, this character proclaimed herself the supreme ruler of lust, displaying her malicious delight and dark power. A giant monster mouth snapped down powerfully, and a worm-like creature slithered away, leaving the message, "Go back to Gehenna, big sister." Immediately after, a violent tremor occurred, sweeping away the 2 characters. The masked man screamed in panic, realizing they were facing a much greater threat than anticipated. After a crash echoed, the teacher stood watching the boy cowering on the ground. He sternly asked if the child was all right, while secretly thinking that this reaction was precisely what he had expected. Amidst the dark and mysterious space, a profound philosophical statement resonated, asserting that sex and death are 2 sides of the same coin, evoking a naked and terrifying truth. A giant creature with wings and countless eyes appeared, hovering in the air. The one riding on its back confidently declared that his influence far surpassed the allure of a mere succubus, while hinting at a child who had never known a woman's carnal knowledge. From below, a small character could only look up, utterly shocked by the words just heard. The smug demoness declared herself the embodiment of human sin, a natural law no one could resist. She mocked the young man, asking if he was longing for a woman and unable to control his urges, plunging him into a state of extreme panic and confusion. Amidst a chaotic scene with dangling legs, a calm voice resonated, "Don't worry." The protagonist seemed to be overwhelmed by the women in town. They surrounded him with laughter and promises to take good care of him, making him wonder if they were being controlled by someone. A character painfully admitted that his opponent knew how to strike at humanity's weakest points, calling them a true demon lord. The boy, now also confused and uneasy, clutched the cross around his neck with both hands. With a frightening expression and cold eyes, the demoness angrily declared she would crush anyone who dared to ruin her hunting ground, a deadly threat not to be underestimated. The boy was collapsing in pain as he was attacked by a furious crowd. Though they tried to create a barrier to defend themselves, they seemed to be failing and gradually being overwhelmed, while the teacher from behind constantly urged them to stop the enemy. A giant, malevolent shadow mocked the boy, who was held by shadowy arms. It tempted him to let pleasure wash away all pain and misery. However, the boy fiercely resisted, struggling in despair and shouting, "Stop! No!" The priest violently swung his sharp weapon, shouting that they would not accept any complaints about a minor beating, and declared that the opponent would have to face Satan himself. A cruel scene unfolded. The boy was savagely beaten by a group of monks under the abbot's direction. The victim cried out for mercy in pain, but the only reply was a cold voice, declaring that only by entering the kingdom of heaven would they find salvation. The boy was trembling, covering his face and repeatedly muttering, "Don't look!" Deeply ashamed and traumatized after a horrific experience. Their companion immediately recognized his state and gently reassured him that everything was all right. The young man fell into despair, surrounded by distorted, grotesque shadow entities. They whispered, "We'll help you forget everything." A haunting temptation, signaling impending mental manipulation or a terrifying assault. Faced with the invitation to immerse yourself in endless joy and drown in eternal desires, the protagonist could only widen their eyes in horror, struggling to voice a protest amidst fear and despair. With a face shrouded in shadow, revealing only a chilling grin with sharp teeth, a menacing voice declared that they would take you to paradise. The protagonist exclaimed in surprise, "Ah!" Then immediately, in a state of pain and profound shock, skeptically asked, "Dice, a biblical verse about blessed are the poor in spirit, and the kingdom of heaven appeared on a glowing book, creating a solemn atmosphere." Yet, the boy was immersed in extreme suffering, clutching himself in despair, creating a poignant contrast. A small winged creature watched in shock as the young man defiantly screamed at the contemptible lord of depravity. Then, in an extreme and horrifying act, he plucked out his own eyeballs to prove his resolve. The boy decided to rush into danger, only having time to ask his master to protect those around them, which greatly surprised the master. At the same time, the demoness was also astonished, realizing that her prey had escaped her control. The young priest began a powerful summoning ritual. He uttered an intense plea, then activated a glowing magic circle, reciting the incantation, "In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit," signaling an imminent release of divine power. With a decisive command, "Bind this demon." Countless thick chains immediately constricted the demonic entity's entire body, binding it in a powerful and irresistible suppression. Bound tightly by chains, the demon fell freely from above with a desperate scream, "No!" The impact with the ground created a terrifying boom, while another person quickly leaped out of the affected area. Amidst a terrifying explosion, the master wore an almost wild, exhilarated smile. A witness to the scene could only exclaim in astonishment, "That child is truly extraordinary." Asmodeus's two weaknesses were revealed: fish liver and Archangel Raphael. The protagonist couldn't help but regret not having brought any fish. At the same time, a complex magical structure began to activate with a loud noise, and white feathers started to fall all around. The colossal creature began to disintegrate, unable to believe it had been defeated by the power of a human. As it completely collapsed, a proud figure stood upon its back, declaring their victory. The master was screaming in extreme agony, seemingly on the verge of breaking apart. A desperate voice warned, "Don't do that, you'll shatter," while the surrounding space violently shook, signaling impending destruction. White feathers fluttered in the air. A young girl wondered in astonishment if someone was about to wield the power of an archangel. Simultaneously, a pair of hands accumulated a brilliant surge of energy, causing the ground to tremble. In the darkness, a figure swung a sharp weapon, creating a cold swish. Amidst the silence, a voice echoed, "I don't care," demonstrating a chilling indifference and resolve. The boy plunged downwards at terrifying speed, a powerful declaration echoing in his mind. "For I was born," signaling an extraordinary mission or origin. The declaration was completed. "To fight Satan." Along with it, the boy received a surge of energy descending directly from a colossal spatial portal. The voice echoed in agony, revealing that all they had ever wanted was to please the other forever. But now, all that remained was anger and a desperate question. "Damn it! Why?" With a furious and somber expression, the protagonist sternly declares that the only one interested in this violent act is the one who commits it. A colossal, ancient gate suddenly opens, revealing a massive dragon-like creature falling through. This is the gate to Gehenna, and the creature that just appeared is none other than Asmodeus, the Lord of Lust. The colossal gate slams shut with an earth-shattering slam. A vast landscape appears, with a gloomy sky marked by mysterious black streaks, possibly smoke or flying entities, creating an unusual and ominous atmosphere. Amidst the snowy landscape, the master anxiously asks Asmodeus about the town's safety. Asmodeus confirms everyone is fine, but it seems he himself is having issues. The master angrily walks away, not forgetting to call him a stupid kid, a scolding that hides deep concern. The boy, with a serious expression, announces that he has repelled the opponent. Behind him, the ground is shattered, indicating incredible power had just been used. The master smiles admiringly, admitting that the boy's strength has exceeded all his expectations. Despite being severely injured, even losing an eye, the protagonist adamantly refuses treatment. His master is utterly shocked and furious at this stubbornness, trying to persuade him while the rescue team is on its way. The boy begins to quote a Bible verse from the book of Matthew, stating that anyone who looks at a woman with desire has already committed sin in their heart. These words surprise the master, while the boy maintains a resolute expression, his hands clenched with determination. The boy confesses his sin of looking at a woman with desire and feels he deserves punishment. To show his repentance, he quotes a scripture about plucking out an eye if it causes sin, accompanied by a gruesome image of a plucked-out eye, splattered with blood. His master grabs the child's head, declaring chillingly that they had force-fed God's teachings into him. He is utterly shocked and terrified, unable to believe what he just heard. The master comforts the boy, who is sadly bowing his head, offering frank advice. He says that when he's older, he can sleep with someone as long as there's consent, and it's also fine if he takes care of himself when he has desires, a direct and non-judgmental concern. A lengthy sermon about procreation and God's punishment is delivered, but it's immediately cut short by a shout demanding silence. The master warns that such a way of thinking will destroy him one day, but only receives an indifferent reply, "I don't care." The boy, with a haggard yet resolute appearance, declares his belief that if he dies in a holy war, God will come to him. These words are met with an angry and horrified reaction from the other person, indicating deep disagreement. The master bluntly declares to the other person that they are not a believer, but a slave. The boy, sitting amidst the white snowy landscape, appears utterly confused and surprised by this assertion. The master angrily scolds the other, calling them a mere child who only follows orders to please God. In response, a desperate warning rings out from the boy, stating that with such an attitude, they will never enter heaven. A fierce confrontation ensues. The boy, furious at being mocked about his salvation, lunges to attack, though evaded and mocked by the master for wanting to be a martyr so soon. He frantically shouts, "Shut up!" The boy continuously scolds and imposes on the master, demanding silence and obedience. In response to this harshness, the boy, with a face full of rage and anguish, shouts, "Shut up!" He recalls the past when he was bullied. The bullies continuously shouted, "Shut up!" trying to suppress talk about a stray dog possessing incredible power. The atmosphere was filled with arguments and desperate attempts to keep a secret. The holy warrior stands over the fallen opponent, contemptuously demanding the boy to be silent and get up, and challenges that with their current strength, they will never be able to resist Satan. Amidst the snowy landscape, the boy struggles to embrace his teacher, while repeatedly saying, "Shut up." With a tear-stained face and pained expression, the boy cried that he couldn't bear it anymore, that he couldn't continue living in this suffering. Amidst a cold scene with light snow falling, a single word echoed, "I understand," as an acceptance of a difficult situation. The master embraced him, understanding that the boy only yearned for happiness. In tears, he expressed despair that he couldn't be happy while alive because he had to fight demons and only wished to go to heaven soon. The master, as someone experienced, gently wiped away his tears and acknowledged his strength. The boy stood alone in the empty space, pondering the advice about love. He could only respond with a thoughtful question mark, seemingly unable to fully grasp the meaning of loving someone. A young character offered sincere advice. Try to love someone and think about them every day. This would change one's perspective on the world and make the other person no longer want to perish. A philosophical voice echoed amidst the vast landscape, stating that over time, one would learn to love the world God created and would fight for it, for the one they loved, and for themselves. Hearing these words, the boy remained silently contemplative, seemingly deep in thought. The master held out his hand as if making a promise, affirming that once he did that, the boy would become invincible. The boy said he was just saying cheesy things. The master angrily yelled, "Shut up!" The master announced that the boy's training was complete, as he had been able to repel Asmodeus on his own. The boy appeared extremely confused and hesitant, seemingly unable to believe this declaration. Finally, the rescue team arrived. Amidst the white snow, the master waved a signal while the rescue team urgently approached, asking if anyone was injured, bringing a sense of relief and safety. The master gently patted the boy's head while saying goodbye with a hint of teasing. The master hoped the boy would find happiness, emphasizing that it was happiness in this lifetime. A meaningful and profound wish. The boy at this moment only turned towards the light, thinking he had gained some insight. For years later in Rome, after completing a period of study, someone was earnestly calling, "Father," outside an ancient church under the night sky, signaling a search or an important event about to unfold. In a library full of books, a boy with a somewhat annoyed expression asked someone named Marco what was happening. Secretary Marco rushed over, panting, while expressing admiration at seeing the young man studying the Bible at this hour. But then, he immediately switched to reporting extremely serious news. Satan has issued a command. This report terrified the young man, his face clearly showing shock and extreme worry. The boy hastily gathered books on love poetry and the Bible, then quickly departed. At the door, Macro, in uniform, was already waiting, announcing an urgent mission from the Vatican Council and requesting details en route. Disturbing testimony was collected at 3 a.m., the hour of demons, through the possessed body of Abbot Nicholas. As they watched the video recording of the testimony, a chilling message appeared. "My name is Satan." This greatly worried the protagonist because if a powerful exorcist like Abbot Nicholas could also be possessed, then they were certainly facing Satan himself. In a dilapidated room, a mysterious character dressed in monastic robes, wearing a mask, issued a threatening challenge. He invited the creator of the Gallery of Evil and all their loved ones to visit him in Gehenna, signaling a dark confrontation about to unfold. When asked about the Gallery of Evil, Macro confusedly explained that it was actually an exhibition by Japanese artist Imuri Atsuki, titled Corridor of Demons. The boy was learning about a female artist whose exhibition had just opened in Rome. Her works, revolving around the theme Demons in Love, had received a lot of support over the years. The young man was deep in thought. He paused, contemplating a big question printed on a document. What is true love? Below which was an image of two figures embracing intimately. After exchanging goodbyes and blessings, the young man explained that he was the only one not on standby, as all other personnel had to guard against future possession incidents. He stood before a large villa in Rome, introduced as the studio of a female artist. The young man, with a pensive expression, walked down a vast corridor, his footsteps echoing. Finally, he stopped before a large double door, and a click sound rang out, signaling his imminent entry. The female artist was painting when the young man from the church appeared at the doorway. He introduced himself and confirmed the identity of the person he had come to protect, the artist Imuri Atsuki. In a light-filled studio, a young female artist was engrossed in completing her large painting. The artwork depicted a romantic and mystical scene with two winged figures, surrounded by light and floating feathers. The large winged figure was slumped, possibly sleeping or unconscious. From one corner, the young man recognized it as Azazel and couldn't help but admire his father's knowledge on the subject. The painting on the easel recounted the story of Azazel, an angel tasked with overseeing humanity, who fell due to love for a girl and was punished. The artist painting this piece had called Azazel a foolish demon. The young man was pondering the meaning of loving someone. Soon after, in a dialogue, another person remarked that it was romantic, while the other simply listened in silence. A young man was questioning a forbidden love, wondering why someone could love a mortal when it went against God's will. Opposite him, a woman with a sad expression seemed to be listening to his question. As the young man awkwardly apologized, the artist, who was painting, sarcastically replied that she wasn't an angel, so she couldn't possibly know, then burst out laughing. This left the young man extremely confused and flustered, realizing he had said something foolish. The young man was astonished to hear about an angel falling to earth due to their transgressions. Soon after, the long-haired artist appeared, declaring that she had a new theory on the matter. With a gentle yet pensive smile, a young woman presented a profound and somewhat tragic concept. The greatest transgression in this world is love. The blonde-haired young man with wide, round eyes, standing amidst magical streaks of light, showed extreme surprise and confusion at an unfolding supernatural event. In a large, sun-drenched gallery, a small figure stood contemplatively, looking up at the streams of light piercing through the window, creating a feeling both serene and somewhat solitary. The young priest began a new mission, escorting a female artist to her temporary home, a small church nestled amidst a densely wooded area. The young woman smiled brightly, expressing satisfaction with the surrounding natural scenery, though she also noted the presence of quite a few insects. On the road leading to the outskirts, the woman reassured the young priest that being far from town was fine, as she herself wanted to return to Japan to avoid attention. The story flashed back to 5 days prior at Milan airport, when someone was extremely surprised to learn the news that the girl was about to depart for Japan. At the airport, an argument erupted. The girl's father objected to the decision to let her go, arguing that the church's support was insufficient. However, the girl and her companion defended her freedom, emphasizing that this was what she desired after a long period of restriction. Marco, the young priest, appeared worried, but a terrifying shadowy entity reassured him. The entity explained that it was being pursued by the lords of transgression, and the Vatican was likely using this opportunity to send it far away. Before leaving, the shadow entity entrusted Marco with the task of holding the fort while I'm away, to which the young man could only sadly reply, "Of course." The girl joyfully embraced the young priest, calling him her knight in shining armor, and expressing her trust in him. However, the young man appeared embarrassed and sulky, turning his back and walking away, refusing the title. With a resolute expression and sharp eyes, the young man firmly declared he would protect the girl standing behind him, who was taken aback by his words and actions. The two main characters officially introduced themselves. Imuri Atsuki, a young female artist with a friendly demeanor, and a solemn young priest who declared he would accompany her to protect her from Satan. After arriving in Japan, the young priest began to arrange their living space. Meanwhile, Imuri was overjoyed and delighted by the spaciousness of her new studio, even though it was filled with boxes. The young priest proposed a plan for dividing the living space. He suggested each person occupy a separate floor in the rectory to respect personal space and avoid interfering with each other's lives. Imuri vehemently opposed the priest's suggestion. When he surprisingly asked why, she simply replied with a strong refusal, "No way, absolutely not," showing extreme annoyance. With a panicked and desperate expression, Imuri confessed to the priest that she was completely incapable of doing any housework, from cooking and laundry to cleaning, and demanded that he do everything for her. Imuri angrily refuted the priest's thoughts, emphasizing that housework is not about gender but basic life skills, and that was precisely why she was worried. The young man stood frozen, asking in surprise, "All of it?" The priest initially agreed to take on the housework but then became hesitant. Seeing this, Imuri suggested hiring a housekeeper, explaining that she had always had help before, leaving the young man silently contemplating in helplessness. Imuri playfully asked the priest if this was his first time living with a woman, and he hesitantly confirmed it. Immediately after, she sternly scolded him, demanding that he at least clean his own room and do his own laundry. With an optimistic attitude and a radiant smile, Imuri expressed her excitement upon learning that this was the priest's first time living with someone else, and suggested they both try their best to make everything work out well. The young priest became utterly panicked and flustered. He awkwardly tried to adjust his thoughts, stammering that this was just a job, not living together. As soon as the priest left, Imuri received a phone call and used work calling as an excuse to avoid him. The priest, who was cleaning, felt extremely angry about being left alone with all the work. An important detail was revealed. Imuri is the girl Satan is pursuing. Information about Imuri Atsuki was revealed. She is an 18-year-old Japanese-British artist whose immediate family has passed away. This makes the target of Satan's pursuit in the phrase, "all their loved ones" ambiguous. Meanwhile, Imuri is on a phone call and appears quite flustered when asked about the progress of her work. Despite not attending school, the young artist Imuri still earns a living and has an income within the top 3% of highest earners in Japan, demonstrating her extraordinary success and talent with works highly acclaimed worldwide. The young priest stood before a large painting titled, "The Demons Who Once Loved." According to reports from the Vatican, this painting depicts an intimate scene between two figures, one of whom has large wings, evoking a forbidden story of love and demons. Standing in the hallway, the young priest was lost in thought. His gaze cast downwards, and silence enveloped the space. Imuri unexpectedly approached the priest, smiling gently and asking him about something beautiful. This sudden closeness made him startle and feel shy. The painting on the wall recounted the story of Azazel, who went against God's will to love a human girl. The young priest looked at the painting with surprise and a touch of worry, especially at the intimacy of the two figures. In a quiet moment, Imuri smiled gently and said, "Someday," expressing a hidden hope. The young priest just listened silently, seemingly lost in thought or empathizing with her words. With longing eyes and a contented smile, the young woman expressed her desire to know that kind of love, a deep and romantic affection. The young priest repeated the phrase, "Go against God for love," with a puzzled expression, then fell into contemplation, while an older individual gently observed his reflection. The young priest suddenly became highly vigilant. Immediately after, a pair of colossal black wings abruptly flapped, creating a resounding noise and sending feathers scattering across the city sky, signaling an extraordinary event about to unfold. A mysterious figure stood atop a tall power pole, gazing solitarily at the city, while a feather drifted across the gloomy sky. Simultaneously, on the balcony of a church, two other figures were also lost in thought, creating a moment of stillness before the storm. After a delicious meal, the young woman couldn't stop praising the priest's cooking skills. He humbly explained that he had gained experience doing various chores, including kitchen duties at the monastery. The young priest was surprised to find the girl suddenly more talkative. She cheerfully explained that she also came from a place with erratic weather, then speculated that he might be from a monastery. The young woman suggested they get to know each other better to live together harmoniously. Initially, the priest was flustered, but she quickly teased him, reminding him that he was the one who spoke of love at their first meeting, then curiously asked if he was experiencing romantic complications, which made him blush even more. As an artist, the young woman explained that she drew inspiration from her surroundings, and then she frankly expressed that, at this very moment, she was very interested in the young priest. With shy and expectant eyes, the young woman gently urged the priest to tell her about himself, creating an intimate and curious atmosphere. When asked about himself, the young priest could only stammer "I," with a flustered, blushing face. In his mind, the advice echoed, "Love, love someone," startling him and plunging him into deep contemplation. A loud boom echoed, causing a violent explosion in the room. One person, tied to a chair, was overturned, while the other was also thrown forward, both utterly surprised by the dangerous situation. Initially, the young woman was startled and thought it was an earthquake. However, the young priest quickly corrected her, saying that it was a demon attempting to breach his barrier. The young woman was terrified when confronted by a frightening dark silhouette she perceived as a demon. The chaotic scene, with loud noises and shaking, indicated a sudden and alarming event had just occurred. The priest said that if the other person wished to convert, they were free to do so, but it wasn't essential. Meanwhile, a small character appeared extremely enthusiastic, asking if they should read the Bible to aid in this conversion. The priest walked down a long corridor, their presence emphasized by the resolute declaration, "I am here," and echoing footsteps. A character stepped on a barrier, causing it to shatter, and sarcastically remarked that it was a rather pathetic barrier for someone dubbed the world's strongest exorcist. He had black wings, like a fallen angel, appearing amidst a space shattered like glass. This entity declared that Lord Satan had greatly overestimated his opponent, indicating a significant confrontation was underway. He introduced himself as Demon Yamato. In response, the young priest demanded the demon state its name and began to chant, "In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit," preparing for a confrontation. Demon Yamato expressed particular interest in the legendary samurai of Japan and directly challenged the priest to an honorable duel, which the priest calmly accepted. He confidently yelled, "Your back is exposed," and lunged to attack. The young priest merely looked at him and said, "Fool!" After delivering a powerful blow to his opponent, the young priest challengingly asked if the other person wanted an honorable fight, implying a confident provocation. With a determined expression, the young priest shouted a challenge to his opponent, urging them to bring out all their comrades, signaling that a fierce battle was about to begin. The young priest was surrounded by a large group of black-winged entities swooping down to attack. One of them challenged, "Well, how about this?" signaling an all-out and dangerous assault. A loud, violent tremor suddenly occurred, startling the small artist. The young girl fearfully clutched her phone, hesitantly wondering if a demon had caused it. He appeared stern, showing extreme shock and astonishment at some mysterious plan. He yelled, directly questioning the actions of the demon lord Satan. He lunged forward with a bird-winged energy radiating from his back. He declared he would handle the brat himself and swore to use his full power to defeat the opponent. Amidst a magnificent architectural setting, he, in a stylish suit, revealed enormous black wings, indicating he was a powerful entity preparing for a confrontation, while his words were quite humble. "I don't mean to underestimate you." A young man with a sinister smile, and a large snake coiled around his shoulder, subtly declared that he was the only one. These words immediately caused extreme astonishment and fear from an older man. Amidst a scene of horrific devastation, a voice echoed, emphasizing the overwhelming power of an unseen foe, stating that no one could stand against him, while countless enemies lay fallen amidst the ruins. He single-handedly defeated all opponents, astonishing the witnesses. He confidently declared that they had underestimated him, then questioned the young priest whether they thought they could confront someone who had once exorcised a sin lord without a plan. A brutal attack unfolded. A flurry of black feathers scattered, followed by a large, scaled limb crushing something with a fierce sound. As a result, a young girl lay collapsed on the ground, her face filled with shock and pain. The artist was intently using her phone to photograph a giant shadow figure stretching across the nearby wall, creating a mysterious and intriguing sensation. Amidst the chaotic scene, a villain spoke of keeping the plan simple. At the same time, the young priest was startled to see a little girl standing at the entrance. Immediately, another priest grabbed the young man, pulled him back, and yelled that he must protect the girl, or she would perish. A character descended powerfully, unleashing a potent attack called Sulfur Flame. The entire space was engulfed in a massive magical explosion, signaling a terrifying destructive power. Two young characters, a male and a female, seemed to be engaged in a battle together. The boy was in front with a resolute expression, launching an attack, while the girl behind showed surprise mixed with focus, amidst a powerful swirling energy. The artist appeared astonished, worried, and slightly uneasy about a sudden event. Around her was a scene of flying debris and powerful speed effects, indicating a fierce attack was underway. The young priest anxiously asked the person opposite if they were injured. However, amidst the smoke and dust, another voice rang out, announcing that their target had escaped. The artist, with long hair and a hat, looked up with a gentle, slightly embarrassed expression. After a moment of silence, she said she was fine, while another hand seemed to be nearby, possibly to comfort her. One person apologized for leaving home without permission, and the other replied that it was all right. But immediately after, a swift sound rang out, causing a character to cry out in surprise, signaling an unexpected event had just occurred. The artist, with a gentle smile and warm expression, offered sincere praise, likening the other person to a knight in shining armor. With a flushed face and shy eyes, The priest listened as the girl expressed her sincere gratitude for saving her life. She simply looked down at him gently and smiled. The priest, seemingly being carried, loudly complained that the other person was the one clinging to him just a short while ago, while secretly thinking that the distance between them was too close. A small chapel-like house appeared amidst a peaceful rural scene, with a black cat and a white butterfly. A voice spoke up, expressing surprise at the sight. After preparing the meal, the priest was surprised to learn that demons are everywhere. The girl asked if he had believed in them before, and the priest was startled to realize that demons truly exist, concluding that exorcism work must be very demanding. The priest recounted that while at the monastery, he mainly baked pastries. The girl, after tasting his cake, was utterly astonished and praised it, saying it looked like it came from a professional bakery. The girl enthusiastically enjoyed the dessert, constantly praising its deliciousness. While another person was happy that she liked the food, the boy sitting opposite could only stare, astonished by the speed and amount of food the girl consumed. The girl teased the priest, asking if he thought she ate a lot. His honest answer seemed to offend her, making her angrily tell him to learn how to talk to girls. The boy still insisted on his honesty, even though the girl said he didn't need to answer truthfully. An argument broke out about eating habits. One person questioned the other about eating too much without gaining weight. The questioned person initially asserted they weren't overweight, then made an excuse that sugar would help stimulate their creativity, ignoring all warnings. Mid-meal, the girl suddenly leapt over the table with an excited expression, while the boy standing opposite could only look on, surprised and shocked by this sudden action. Enjoying the meal, the girl expressed feelings of comfort and happiness they hadn't experienced in a long time, a quiet and fulfilling moment. With flushed cheeks and a surprised expression, the boy looked intently forward and exclaimed, "How fun!" showing a positive yet somewhat confused emotion. The young priest recalled the previous question and asked the girl if there was anyone she was interested in. In response, the young girl, with a surprised and confused expression, asked what was happening. The priest expressed his confusion at being told he was not masculine enough. This led to a deeper reflection that he couldn't understand love, concluding with a hesitant statement full of inner conflict. Standing in a bright kitchen, the young priest expressed his desire to live a peaceful life, cooking in the kitchen, instead of bearing the great responsibility of fighting to save the world from evil. The boy sternly asserted to the girl that he was not a knight, clutching the collar of his coat, while the girl simply listened with a slightly surprised expression. The young girl cheerfully said that she thought they would get along well. However, the other person, cleaning up in the kitchen, seemed hesitant, indicating a reservation or something unresolved. The young man seriously declared that there was one thing only he could do: exorcise Satan. Hearing this, the girl stood with her back to him, looking out the window, agreeing and expressing her trust and reliance on him. The artist had just entered and agreed to something when she received another work call, causing her to apologize for the interruption. Meanwhile, the boy standing beside her could only look on in surprise. The priest admitted that his power had failed at a crucial moment. At the same time, another person mocked that it was a pathetic obstacle for the world's strongest exorcist, implying they had easily overcome it. The young priest touches his temple, seemingly deep in thought, and acknowledges his own weakness. While a girl intently listens on the phone, elsewhere, a young man sits near a giant dragon mural, thinking he needs to be even stronger to protect her. On a phone call, a girl worries the task might take a long time. On the other end, a bat-winged figure replies that it's her responsibility and she needs to do it right. Amidst a chaotic space, a voice rings out, declaring definitively, "That is a problem." Over the phone, a mysterious figure commands a winged girl to make someone fall for her before he is reborn. The girl calmly listens and confirms understanding. With a sharp and confident gaze, artist Imuri Atsuki declares she has heard the message clearly and then directly names Lord Satan, as if receiving instructions or inspiration from a supernatural force. In her studio, artist Imuri is immersed in her creative work, pondering about love. She yearns to experience a fated love, a love capable of completely transforming her being and her life. The artist, with obscured eyes, suddenly calls out, "Hey!" The girl thinks about their feelings when Azazel fell, especially when Azazel chose them instead of God. The one asked merely replies with a knowing chuckle. With a radiant smile and passion for art, a young girl reminisces about a beautiful experience, thinking to herself, "That must have felt amazing." The story flashes back to a few months ago in Gehenna, also known as Hell. A towering, gloomy, and majestic urban landscape appears, signaling a significant past event. A hand holds a half-eaten apple, symbolizing an end and a beginning. Two voices ring out, one affirming rebirth, and another whispering that it will happen soon. A mysterious boy with a mischievous smile, a snake coiled around his arm, says that a small problem is about to occur, creating an atmosphere both mysterious and slightly menacing. He, with a cold gaze, declares he has decided to change his approach, because some lords have failed when confronting the world's strongest exorcist. An earnest plea, "I need you," rings out, directed at Imuri, who is dubbed the Lethal Woman. As she walks with a stylish and mysterious demeanor, he assigns a young girl the task to make him fall for you. He firmly says, "Listen," then discards a half-eaten apple. Immediately after, a young girl, surprised, offers to keep an eye on someone for him, then questions herself again. He announces that he was born without any demonic powers, which helps him conceal his true identity from exorcists. He reacts to this information calmly, merely asking, "All right, so what?" The young girl angrily declares to Lord Satan that he has no right to decide who she will be with, and asserts that she alone will decide her affections. Someone comments on the other's honesty in expressing their desires, and asks if she is still patiently waiting for her one and only. In response, a firm voice rings out, "Of course." With a mischievous smile and sharp teeth, the girl confidently declared, "I am a demon," after all, unabashedly asserting her identity. Amidst the ruins, the demon commented on another with a helpless yet humorous attitude, showing familiarity with the person's difficult personality. "Always trouble, that one." After some deliberation, a young girl seemed to have made up her mind and turned her attention towards a small church. A girl lamented that she was losing her mind from being indoors painting all day. Hearing this, a priest turned to ask with concern, suggesting she might want to go outside. The girl tried to convince the priest that going out would be fine because he was very strong. However, he deemed it too risky and reluctantly agreed to stay for safety, though unhappy about restricting her freedom. Two people were noisily discussing and praising the extraordinary feats of a heroic figure, from defeating lords to vanquishing evil entities, seeing him as a rare miracle. The priest remarked that the power of the demons they faced yesterday was incomparable to that of the demon lords. The young man beside him, with a worried expression, clarified that he didn't truly defeat them but merely repelled them. An impressive painting was introduced, depicting a fallen angel falling from the heavens. The explanation stated that the painting symbolized the lords of the 7 deadly sins and represented the ultimate fate of a fallen angel's journey. A young girl, with a curious expression, questioned a man referred to as father about who he had repelled, but the man remained silent, appearing flustered. 3 of the infernal lords were introduced: Asmodeus, lord of lust, Mammon, lord of greed, and Beelzebub, lord of gluttony, amidst a dark and powerful setting. In a quiet moment, a young girl mused, mentioning Lord Asmodeus, and revealing that he was one of the 3 lords she had encountered. The list of the lords of the deadly sins continued: Lucifer, lord of pride, Leviathan, lord of envy, and Belphegor, lord of sloth, amidst a somber and mysterious atmosphere. The identity of the final adversary was revealed. Satan, the lord of wrath, was the one pursuing the protagonist. The image of a colossal, shadowy entity with glowing eyes further intensified the sense of dread and menace. In a phone call, a young man informed Imuri that her mission was top secret and he hadn't told the other demons, implying she might be in danger from them. Imuri appeared greatly surprised and worried by this information. A girl, with a knowing expression, was contemplating. She thought that while the young man protected her from the lords, she could interpret the situation differently to her own advantage. The priest was pondering seriously about his mission. He told himself that he had to make the same young man, who had the power to overcome their adversaries, fall for him while still concealing his true identity. A girl cheerfully announced that the church members were gathering in Japan. In response, the young man reassured her that he would protect her and she didn't need to worry. With an extremely determined and serious expression, the priest declared he would steadfastly exorcise any and all demons that stood in his way. A girl smiled and told herself she had made up her mind. Her thoughts were then revealed. If I don't like him, I'll run away, or I'll be eliminated. Showing the gravity and risk of the situation she was about to face. The scene outside the Japan National Aquarium was bustling with activity, featuring a large statue depicting a whale shark, dolphins, and orcas, attracting an eager crowd. The two main characters, amazed and delighted, walked through an underwater tunnel at the aquarium, surrounded by diverse marine life such as giant sunfish, stingrays, and countless schools of small fish. The two young characters were enthralled by their visit to the aquarium, attentively observing large tanks teeming with fish of all sizes and vibrant coral reefs, completely captivated by the underwater world. A cloaked figure was suddenly startled when a long-haired girl appeared swiftly. Immediately after, the two then departed together, with the girl continuing to move lightly and silently. The young girl abruptly asked a priest if he had maintained his chastity, leaving him utterly flustered. Another girl standing nearby witnessed the scene with a look of discomfort and displeasure. The priest stated that there was more to life than that, while the girl anxiously inquired about priests upholding their vows of celibacy and if they ever felt lonely, then quickly added that she didn't mean to tease. The cloaked priest firmly declared that they had dedicated themselves to God and had no regrets. This declaration caused the woman opposite him to hesitate slightly. She seemed about to speak but then refrained. The priest thoughtfully recalled the advice of a priest he didn't respect, who had told him he should love. Amidst the mystical ambience of the aquarium, the woman spoke of Azazel, the character in the boy's painting, who had defied God for love. The boy then expressed his curiosity about this concept. After observing a whale swimming among small fish, a young girl smiled gently and said it was just like her, showing deep empathy. Standing before a large fish tank, the priest showed clear confusion and said, "I don't understand," seemingly trying to decipher something. Amidst the peaceful scenery of the underwater world, a character wondered why they felt incredibly comfortable talking to that girl. A passionate young girl hastily announced that the killer whale show was about to begin and urged everyone to go immediately, while the other quickly checked their watch, realizing the urgency of the situation. A large black crow looked down at a crowded stadium, where two smaller figures were running away, and the crowd seemed to be reacting unexpectedly. A giant killer whale suddenly burst through the water's surface, creating a massive splash and causing terrifying chaos all around. A huge crowd of small figures, all wearing hoods, were cheering loudly in a vibrant and energetic festive atmosphere. The girl was showing extreme delight, possibly singing or performing. A boy looked up with curiosity, and then the girl appeared surprised by a sudden event that had just occurred. The young girl was extremely happy and excited to attend a killer whale show. She turned to her companion and asked, "Exciting, isn't it?" Amidst the chilly atmosphere, the boy simply replied briefly, "Yes," seemingly lost in thought. A mysterious voice suddenly called out, "Hey," and asked the main character, "Having fun?" He only responded with a questioning remark, while black birds soared into the sky, creating an air of mystery. A giant black crow looked down at the young man and spoke, hinting at a destined reunion after 3 years apart. A character is unexpectedly attacked or violently struck by a dark entity, revealing a look of extreme shock and bewilderment. A terrifying, dark entity issues a menacing challenge. "Let's see how much of a man you've become." A strange object hurtles down at terrifying speed, crashing into the water with a huge splash amidst a chaotic scene of scattered feathers. A massive flock of black crows suddenly soars into the sky, astonishing everyone. Simultaneously, an enormous object emerges from beneath the water, signaling a potential threat. The protagonist and his crew can only watch in apprehension. A horrific explosion occurs, engulfing everything in a destructive surge of energy, forcing the protagonist to face a terrible impact. The priest exclaims in horror that it is the power of a demon lord, and what's more terrifying is that the adversary isn't even bothering to conceal it. The killer whale is roaring or making a loud noise, causing a young girl to panic, asking, "Where's the priest?" Two female characters in diving suits realize with dismay that the giant sea creatures they control are no longer obeying them, while everything around them is crumbling and breaking apart. The dark killer whale plunges down at terrifying speed, creating a massive water explosion and sweeping away a group of panicked people in the chaos. After a black bird flies away, a voice echoes, "Enjoy!" The young man stands watching with a surprised look, seemingly reacting to a mysterious message that has just been conveyed. The killer whale attacks a crowded arena, creating a violent shockwave that sends the crowd into a panicked frenzy of screams and desperate cries for help. The priest, with a frantic and urgent expression, shouts "Mammon," seemingly facing an extremely dangerous situation. A chaotic scene unfolds in the water. A shark fin appears amidst large waves, while many people are struggling. One person shouts that they saw something, while another on the shore watches in horror. A character quickly hoists the other over their shoulder, explaining that it's an emergency, while the one being carried looks utterly surprised. The priest quickly grabs a character in danger underwater. The rescued person frantically cries out that they can't swim, but the rescuer firmly states that they cannot be left behind as it's too risky. The girl is initially surprised to hear the story of Moses, but then she seems to struggle underwater and is finally submerged with a loud grab sound. A majestic scene unfolds, reminiscent of the biblical Red Sea event. A colossal vortex is parting, transforming the seawater into dry land, to the astonishment of the witnesses. The young girl, with a stunned and fearful expression, witnesses a colossal body of water being spectacularly split in two, creating a magnificent sight like the parting of the Red Sea. The young priest, with a stern expression, points his finger and commands the foul demon to be gone. Immediately, the large, dark demon reacts violently, being powerfully thrown backward. The killer whale suddenly shifts from alert to aggressive, its mouth wide open to reveal sharp teeth and fierce eyes, signaling an imminent attack. After a strong impact, many children fell to the ground, screaming in fear. Immediately after, the priest appeared, asking if anyone was hurt and gently comforting them. The priest held and shielded many sobbing children, comforting them that everything was all right and they were safe. The young girl was watching with curious and surprised eyes, but she remained silent, seemingly harboring an unspoken thought. Outside an aquarium, someone apologized to Imuri Atsuki, and the girl simply asked why. The young man bowed very deeply, expressing sincere apologies for touching the girl without permission, even though it was an emergency. With extreme remorse and despair, a character bowed deeply and urgently pleaded for forgiveness. The priest laid down a new rule: no touching girls without permission. Hearing this, another girl merely giggled, amused by the seriousness of the person being admonished. With a radiant smile and a mischievous gesture, a girl made a sweet offer that if she were to fall into a sleep like Sleeping Beauty, the other person would be allowed to kiss her cheek to rescue her. With sharp eyes and determination, the priest declared that their mission was to ensure the other person would not suffer the fate of Sleeping Beauty. Amidst a peaceful scene, a progress report request from the depths of Gehenna was made, and a brief dialogue ensued between Imuri and Demon Lord. On a phone call, someone asked if they resembled a Trojan horse, making the girl on the other end laugh. Afterward, the person inquired about her again, calling her a damsel in distress. On a phone call, someone asked the girl if she was gradually developing feelings for him. The girl shyly replied that she was still not quite sure, but also declared she wouldn't stop right now. A mysterious, majestic entity explained that someone had experienced hardship at the hands of Asmodeus and asked her to treat that person kindly. On a phone call, a skeptical woman said, "Oh, really?" Then frankly expressed that she didn't think the person on the other end imagined her as a cute and innocent maiden,